All right, welcome everyone. Welcome to the Forge Online Bootcamp. This is the fourth day of the training, and today we'll be talking about design automation and how to modify your modules using the Forge APIs. My name is Augusto Goncalves. I'm a Forge advocate here at Autodesk, and I have here with me João Martins. He's also a Forge advocate, and we'll be taking care of you.
Just
If you
one
have any
second.
questions.
I
Yes.
can't see your screen. Are you guys able to see the screen? Oh, now I see it.
Okay, maybe you join it after. That's right. Okay, sorry.
All right.
And welcome everyone again. And we'll be doing the training today. If you have any questions, you can post your questions on the chat window. There is also a Q&A button. That's usually the best way. And if you want to open up your microphone, you can raise your hand and ask your questions. During the presentation, you can post your questions on the Q&A. And after that, we have a Q&A section where if you want, you can open your microphone. So it's up to you. And this is very flexible, and that's your chance to talk to us and ask your questions. So please be sure that if you have any questions, ask. You can find all the content online, but here's your chance to ask questions and to talk to us. So let's go. This is a series of 4 days trainings. Everything is available online on learnforge.autodesk.io. This week, we are running these trainings in .NET and Node.js. So today here, this session will be for .NET. There is another session going on at the same time with Node.js, so you can choose the one you want. We'll be doing 4 sessions during the day. Now it's 8 a.m. Pacific, and we have four more sessions, 8, yeah, and I'll show you the times in a second. And during each of those sessions, we are going to do a live coding. And after that, you have some time to do it yourself, and you can do your daily work. Then you come back to the next session, and we continue with that. As I said, we have four days this training. Today is the 4th day, the last one, and we are going to send you the recordings of day 1, 2, and 3, and also day 4. Everything will be available. All the recordings will be available online after we finish the week. All right, so let's start day 4, modifying your models with design automation service. So the purpose of today's training is to create a sample like this, where you can specify the width and height of the model, and that you can select a file that will run design automation to open that file and modify the parameters that you specified. The training today works the same way for AutoCAD, Revit, Inventor, and 3D Max. It's essentially showing you how to start the process to modify a few parameters and then get back the results. You can modify that code to do any other kind of task, but this is essentially how the service works. You upload an input and get back the results at the end. So we're now on the 8 a.m. session. We have a 10 a.m., 12 p.m., and 2 p.m. sessions every 2 hours. And in between times, you can, between those sessions, you can implement your code and submit your questions using the Q&A. And as soon as we get back, we're going to review that and move to the next piece. All right, any questions so far? As I said, just use the Q&A. We're going to monitor the Q&A session and get back to you. Okay, session 1. This is the first piece, and the Design Automation API works with 4 different engines. You can select Revit, Inventor, 3ds Max, or AutoCAD. There is just a small caveat that for AutoCAD, you can also use Civil 3D specific APIs. This is still in beta, but it still works. The way the API works is that you have this input that you send to Design Automation. The Design Automation will then launch the engine, run the code for you with your input file, and then it will give you back an output file. This Next is a bit better. So you send to this this design automation engine that is running on the cloud. You send your code, you specify the engine with the source files, and send all of that to design automation. Design automation will execute that for you and give you back a result. That result can be data, can be new files or modified files. It's essentially the engine that you can do what you can do with the engines. It's important that the data can come from any source. So you can get the data from BIM 360, from your Google Drive, from your local drive. It really doesn't matter. It's only important that your data is available on the cloud. So design automation can go there and grab the data for you. Design automation will send back the results to you. So you have to be sure that you have a place where design automation can upload back the results. Everything is running through standard web requests, so there is no special permissions for it. If you have your files hosted on your network, you have to make that available to design automation. And on the page, on this help page, there is a the list of IPs that we use to call your system. So if you want to whitelist, list those IPs. Design automation will then run your code, execute your the process that you need, and send you back the results again via web requests. Design automation will not keep any of the data, right? As soon as the work item, as soon as the execution is done, design automation will delete all the data we have, all the files that you uploaded. The only thing we keep is the code and the definition of the process that you want to run, because in summary, you want to upload your code and define how it works once, and then execute several times. So we keep the code as long as you delete it, but the data, the files that you submit to execute, we delete everything after the execution is done. So what do we need for this first step? We need a Forge account, and we need a Forge app. You don't need AutoCAD, Inventor, Revit, or 3D Max to run this tutorial. We are providing that piece of the code for you. And that's not the purpose of today's training, to work with the specific APIs for those products. We'll be focused on design automation and how to connect all the dots. And we also need Visual Studio. The community version should be enough. And if you're installing that right now, please make sure to select the web development and the desktop development. The desktop development will be needed for if you want to use one of the engines. And we also need ngrok, because design automation will call back our application once it's done. So we need that to receive those callbacks. Okay, so let's see what we need and get set up. Let me move here and let me close this for a moment. Okay, so essentially we need to go to the forge.autodesk.com, and if you don't have an account, you click on sign in here at the top right, and click on create an account and follow the steps to create an account. After you're done creating your account, come back to this page and sign in. So I'm going to use my Gmail account, click next, my password. So once you come to this page, if this is your first time, this list should be empty. But as I did this training a few times, I have a few apps here. So what we need here is to create a new app, and like is described here. And I'll call it Forge Bootcamp Day 4 training. And we need the callback that we are always using the same. And I'm going to send you these things. 3000 API Forge callback. So you don't have to memorize all of this. As I mentioned, all this training is available online. So let's go to learnforge.autodesk.io. And what we are doing right now is this before you start coding. So you create an account and create an app and use this as your callback. For this training today, we will not be using the callback. So it can be any value, essentially. But if you're doing other parts of the API, then you need this callback. And we use this value here on all of our samples. We move back and let's hit create. Now that I created my app, I have two things that I need. I have the client ID and I have the client secret. Okay, so let me switch this here and go back. So the next thing we have to do is to install Visual Studio. So visualstudio.microsoft.com and select the community edition here. That should be enough. If you have professional or enterprise, it works as well. We're not using Visual Code for today. It could be used, but it's not the best option. For Windows, the community is the Visual Studio is the best option. And there is also a version for Mac, but we're using Windows today. Last, let me close this. We need ngrok. So just search for ngrok download here and download for Windows and download, and you should have that on your downloads folder. I had downloads before, so let me get rid of this. So you have a zip like that, like this name. You just unzip it and you have this ngrok. That's what we need. Okay. All right, so that's all we need for this first section. And if you finish this, you should have the client ID and secret, and you should have Visual Studio up and running on your machine once you finish it. Let me maximize and just break this down here so it will be easier for later. Okay, I see we have one question. What is the question? What happens if running a plugin in the cloud causes an exception, engine exception error, or endless loop? Okay, so if you have an exception on your code, and that's a very good question. Thank you. Let me go to the Forge. Let me move this away. Forge.com and go to the Design Automation API documentation. And Design Automation Developer Guide. And so if you are running a Revit specific plugin, the best thing is to use the failure API, right? So with that, you can handle most of the Revit constraints kind of error message. If you have a code exception, like no reference or no code problem, the code will just end and the work item will finish. But for Revit specific, it's better to use the failure processing. There is a few more information here about how to handle that for Revit. And but essentially, if it's a constraint kind of problem, the system will trigger an exception on the system that you can handle here in case of Revit. If it is a code exception, like a problem on your code, then it will stop working and the work item will finish as failure. We are going to see through this course today that by the end of the process, you get a report with everything that you have executed. There is also ways for you to log some output during the execution, which is also important for you. So we're going to show that as well. Now, if you have an endless loop, there is a tracking on the system. There is a heartbeat kind of tracking, meaning that if the engine is not responding to the system checks, it will end it will end sooner. But if you have an endless loop that is still doing a heartbeat, right? The work item may execute until the timeout. So there is an API to specify the timeout. So you can come here to the API, and I believe it's service limits. So you can put a new timeout. So if you know, let's say, limit processing time in seconds and total size. So if you know that your kind of process will always take, I don't know, 1 minute, you may say that the limit is, I don't know, 2 minutes, and the system will will finish the work item at the time that you specified. That will be your timeout. But there is a system timeout as well. So you can rely on the system timeout or define your own. So I believe the limit should be right here. Yes, right here. So that's the limit, the full limit in seconds, 400, etc., etc. So you can use the default limit or use your own. So hope that answers your question, Navid. All right. Any other questions? Okay, so to summarize, you should have your Forge account, Forge application. You should have Visual Studio up and running, and you should have ngrok. By the way, let me show you ngrok. I think I forgot this one. So cmd, the command prompt for Windows, and then we go to downloads. Sorry, cd downloads. And if we go back to the tutorial, we are working with the modifier models tutorial, and we'll be doing the create a server. But before that, we have to run ngrok. So just copy this piece here and paste here. And you should have something like this. You run this line, and then you have the http ngrok.io. So that's the information we need later. And you should have this interface. So that means that ngrok is running fine. So again, to summarize, your Forge account, Forge application, development environment with Visual Studio up and running, and ngrok. So the next session will be 10 a.m. in roughly 1 hour and 40 minutes from now. That should give you plenty of time to install Visual Studio, download all the tools you need, and get your environment up and running. If you have any questions during that time, you can use the Q&A button and post your question. If it's something simple, we're going to reply as soon as possible. Otherwise, as soon as we get back, we're going to answer that question live so everyone can see the answer. Okay? So see you at 10 a.m. in 1 hour and 40 minutes from now. So there is just one question from Enrique, how to upload the results to BIM 360. So when we move to the next step, when we discuss the specifics of the work item, can we go back to this? And then we describe it better on the next session, right? I'll leave this question running here. Okay, so I'll leave this running and see you at 8 a.m. All right, welcome to session number 2. This is about creating the basic server and the application interface. Before we go, any questions from previous session? You can raise your hand, you can use the Q&A, either way. Right, so let's follow the steps on the tutorial to create a new project, ASP.NET Core Web Application. We're going to set up the environment variables, create the basic server with the startup and the authentication piece of our code, and then the basic UI for the application. Let's see how it works. So this is where we stopped on the previous session. You see that my ngrok is still running, and I would just like to point out that ngrok, I believe it expires every 2 hours. So that's now I have 16 minutes on this session. There is no problem, it's just that you have to refresh that after we finish. So I'll show you how to do this, but just to remind you about this piece here. So we stopped this at the create a server session on the tutorial on the right and Visual Studio on the left. So let's go to .NET Core. And here we're going to create a new project and add a few references to the project. So let's go to File, New Project. And we are going to select, why so slow? We're going to select ASP.NET Core Web Application and click Next. We are going to give it a name. So we're going to use Forge sample. Some pieces of the code will use this name. So it's important to be the exact same with F in Forge lowercase, S in sample uppercase. And click Next. Okay, we are doing this tutorial in .NET Core 3.1, which is the current long-term support version from Microsoft. The newest version is .NET 5. So the design automation API and all the things we use to create an application should work with either version. But this tutorial was meant for LTS, so it's 3.1. Right? If you decide to use 3.5, there are a few changes on your code that you may have to do on the code in general, not the Forge specific APIs. So that's why we're keeping with 3.1. I believe Microsoft will launch the next long-term support version, which is version 6, by the end of this year. That's what they announced. So once they do it, we're going to migrate the tutorial as well. But as of today, the tutorial is 3.1. Let's also disable HTTPS. We don't need that for our local debugging. And click Create. Give it a few moments. So it's creating the project for us. This is the empty web application, but it does come with a few things that we don't need, right? So you may have to delete a few extra things that we don't need. So let's see what we have once it's done. All right, so we don't need this pages thing. So let me get rid of this. Delete. And we also don't need any of those things here. So let's also delete it. It's just because the project comes with a basic interface that we don't need. All right, so the next step is to add a few packages that we are going to use for design automation in Newtonsoft. So let's right click on the project and add NuGet package. And we go to browse and click and search for Autodesk Forge right here. And the Autodesk Forge, is that the one here? Just click install. And OK. We also need the Forge design automation. So let's select here. And the only thing here is that the latest version of this package is version 4.2, but the version 4 is for .NET 5. So we are going to stick with the version 3. The API itself did not change. So it's okay to use version 3 of the package. It's just the package is using some new things from .NET. That's why there is a new version. So version 3 and install and okay. Next, we need the MVC Newton soft. So let's copy here and paste. That's the one. Again, we are using .NET 3. So let's select the 3. Any version here. The major version is .NET 3 and install. And okay. And accept. Next, we need this also other package. Let's copy, come here and paste and select again version 3 of this package. Is actually described right here to use version 3 of those packages and install and okay and accept. And that should be it for the packages. Once you finish, you see that there is it's showing you updates, right? Let me clear this out. It's just saying there is a new version of those packages, but we know that we cannot use it yet because we're using .NET 3, right? So don't worry about this warning. Let's save and close. Close this as well. All right, so let's move to the next piece. We're going to add the environment variables to our application. So let's add the ASP.NET Core. Let's copy, go to our project, right click and go to properties and go to debug. So we already have the environment. Let's add the URL and this here. So you're just telling the system, the .NET, to use this localhost 3000. And the idea of localhost 3000 is just because we use that on all of our samples. So it's just to be consistent with the other samples. Now we need the client ID. And for that, we go back to our Forge app here and copy this, paste here. And let's go back to tutorial and add the client ID secret. Let's click add and paste and come back here and copy our client secret. Remember that you should not share your client secret. And I'm going to delete this or refresh once we are done here. Last one is the webhook URL. So let's copy and paste in here. And this is the one that is coming from ngrok. So that's why it's important, right? You see that now I have just 9 minutes and this is going to expire. So what you have to do is Control C here, Control C, and run it again to get a new one. But it's possible that by the time that you finish the tutorial or by the time that you are running your application, it may have expired again. So you have to always get a new ngrok callback. So keep that in mind, that you have to pay attention to these things. So if this is expired, the sample as it is will not work. All right, so last piece is to change here to 3000 as well. We're just using that as a standard on all of our samples. That's why we use 3000. Okay, now we have all the callback, the environment variables. And as we see here, it's matching. Now it's time to make a few changes on our code. So let's go to the program.cs and add those 2 additional namespaces right here. And let's add these to the program.main. So replace this with this source available. So what we're doing here is that we are saying that design automation, please use the environment variables and use design automation. Doing two things. Now we go to the startup.cs add one additional namespace that we need. And let's copy this content, and we are going to replace with what's available here. So now we are just telling the system to use .NET 3 and add Newtonsoft, and to use SignalR. And SignalR will be used to relay back information to the system. Yes, let me change here to 50. It's better now. So when we're just using SignalR to relay back the information to the client. And we're going to use static files, HTML, JavaScript, and to use MVC, which is the system that supports all of that. All right. I think we're good here. Moving to the next piece, we're going to create this OAuth controller. So let me copy this and go back here and go to the project and add a new folder that we're going to call controllers. And this is just for organizing our code, right? But now we have to create a new controller. So click here. And there are a few options. We're actually using API controller, and it's an empty API controller, and click add. And we'll be calling it OAuth controller. This suffix controller, it's important. That's how the system will find most of them. All right, so this is the controller, the typical one. We don't need this skeleton. Let's just paste ours. So what we're doing here is that we have this internal token that will be created within Autodesk to use the APIs using our ID and secret. And whenever I need an access token, the system will get me one, or will get the existing one, or request me a new one if it's already expired. Right? So every time it's expired or there is no token, it will get me a new one and maintain some information for when the access token is expired. So I always have a ready to use access token, and it's using the getting the ID and secret from the environment variables. All right, so let me save this again. And we are done with this piece. Let's go to the basic API UI. Again, .NET Core. Inside our www root folder, let's create this index.html. Let's copy this, go here and add a new item that will be a HTML page that we're calling index. And that's the skeleton that we don't need. Let's paste ours here. And we're going to see this running. It's better to see the results of the HTML than look at the code. But a few things to note: we are using a few libraries, jQuery, Bootstrap, and we are also using SignalR from Microsoft. And this is the JavaScript that we are going to create next. Let's move here to the next piece, JavaScript, and copy, and go to our wroot and add a new item. And in this case will be a JavaScript that will be called Forge Design Automation, and add. Yeah. So David, you're saying there is an error on it. Let me see what this is. Oh yeah, it's just a double point. Thanks, Visual Studio. There's just extra semicolon here, but it doesn't really affect because it's just, yeah. But yeah, thank you, David. It's yeah, it's just fixing that was a semicolon here. Okay, now we have the JavaScript. So what is this JavaScript doing? Let me come back at the beginning. This is just connecting our client to our server, right? So it has a few functions to prepare a list of all the things we have, all the activities, engines, and bundles, and setting up a few buttons and establishing the WebSocket connection. There is also pieces of code to list what we have, clear the account, create the bundle, just collecting all the data from the client and sending to the server, create the bundle that will actually do the AJAX call, create activity, and that's the big one that will start the work item, and some function to write the log back on the screen. And this last piece is the SignalR, establishing the SignalR connection. All right, we can run our application now. So we just click on display here. That should start our code and launch that on the browser. So let's see. So it's compiling. I see here is .NET 3.1 as expected. And yeah, it opens the browser. So I'm running on Parallels, so that's why it's a bit slow. Usually when you run on your machine, it should not be that slow. And here we have our application. There is nothing here actually, because we haven't implemented anything. But if I click on I can see the new pop-up, but there is no information just yet. We're just creating the basic skeleton. So the HTML is creating all of this, and this output here where we will see the results. Okay, any questions so far? And there was a question from the previous session from Enrique Galicia on how to upload the results back to BIM 360. So Enrique, that question is, the challenge that you have is that you have to specify the location back to BIM 360 before you finish your processing. There are two ways to do it, right? You can run your design automation and ask design automation to send the results straight back to BIM 360, which works. The challenge is that you have to give BIM, design automation the access token, and the access token may expire in a few minutes. So if you have something that will run really quickly, it should work most of the time. But the way to do it is that you ask design automation to send back the results to a location where you can specify a signed URL that will live for at least a few hours. Once the automation is done, it will send back the results to that location, and will send you a notification, and then you go to that location, get the file, and send back to BIM 360. So sending directly to BIM 360 is possible, but may not work if your design automation job is taking too long. So there are two options here. You are asking if you can, if you can use callback webhook. So the callback from design automation will not give you the data. We'll just notify you that we'll not give you the file. We'll just notify you that the work item is done, right? So you still need to get the file from some location. So the callback is just to notify you that it's done. Let me stop this, and instead let me show you a sample. So yeah, so this sample here is doing exactly that. We'll update a Revit file and send back to BIM 360. But the piece of code that you're looking for is, I believe, right here. Not here, sorry. Yeah, okay, so you use that one, right? So you start a Revit job telling that you should upload the results, upload to BIM 360 once you're done. And that function here, oops. That function, what's happening? That function BIM 360, it's right here. Come on. Yeah, that should be doing that. Now my mouse is a bit crazy. Build, upload back to BIM 360. So that will get you the upload URL that is coming from BIM 360. But you have to generate the upload URL back to BIM 360. So if you use that one, that's how you can upload straight back to BIM 360. Okay, cool. All right, so we are done with this section of the tutorial. By the end of this section, you should have a new project with the environment variables, basic server with the startup.cs, the authentication piece, the OAuth controller, and the basic UI that you can quickly test as I did here. I'll give you some time to finish this section, and we'll be back in 1 hour and 1 hour and 40 minutes again, noon Pacific time, to resume this section. And as before, if you have any questions, just post that on the Q&A, or as soon as we get back, we're going to answer your questions and move to the next piece of the tutorial. And any other questions? Let me pause the recording. Okay, so let's start session 3, prepare plugin and app bundle code. Before we move, are there any questions? I see there is one question. I'm not sure if the person is still here, but the question was for a beginner, and in respect for looking towards the future, is there a recommendation of one platform over the other, .NET versus Node.js, in regards to Forge development? So yeah, Forge is very language agnostic, so there is no requirements to use Forge. You can do with Node, .NET, Python, PHP, doesn't really matter. When it comes to design automation, as we are running a plugin inside the engine, those plugins need to use the language of that engine. In the case of Revit, it needs to be .NET. For Inventor, it needs to be .NET as well. AutoCAD can be C++, .NET, Lisp, and JavaScript. And Max can be .NET and Max script. So I think to your question, the real point is, what is your background knowledge or previous knowledge on programming? And what kind of access do you have on your company or on your environment to what kind of support you have? So here we use most of our samples are in Node and .NET, because that's what we see on most of our customers. So that's why we use those two languages as primary on most of our samples. But there is no specific requirement on technology side. It's more on the support, what kind of tools you have and what kind of previous knowledge you may have. Okay, so we are now preparing the session 3 to prepare a plugin and logic for creating the app bundle. Please. And let's move here. Not here. All right, so that's where we stopped last time. We finished creating the interface, and now we're going to prepare a plugin. So to do the plugin, you need the engine that you're going to compile your plugin, and you also need something to compile, to zip your code. We are using 7-zip because you can automate that as well. And you may need to download the specific engine. But for today's training, we're not doing that. So if you select one of the engines, let's say I'm selecting Revit, there is this message at the top that you can just download the bundle ready to use. or you can create the code, but we're not going through those steps. So let me click here and download the bundle. So you see that it's downloading the Revit bundle. And if I go to the downloads folder, I see that that's the Revit code. And let me go back here and select AutoCAD. And I'll do the same. I'll download this one. And I will also go back and select Inventor and download the bundle. And once I'm done downloading all three bundles, I'm going to skip to the upload piece. And I'm doing all three bundles just to demonstrate how it works, right? Let me go back to my code. And sorry, one more thing. Let me go back here. It says that you have to download the bundle and upload them to this folder. For example, wroot bundles folder. So let's go to the wroot here on our project and select open in File Explorer. And let's go to downloads. And let's create a new folder that needs to be bundles. And copy them there. So all three bundles are doing exactly the same thing. They're just opening the file, changing the parameters, and saving back. So there's no difference. Okay. Now we're going to prepare the code to upload the bundle. Let's click on .NET Core. And we're going to create a new controller that is called Design Automation Controller. And let's copy this, go back to our code, and create a new controller. That will be an API empty controller, and click Add. And the name should be Design Automation Controller. As usual, it comes with a basic skeleton that we can just replace with ours. So this is just a basic API controller that we have the environment host, so you can access the folder and other things. This is the SignalR hub. This is getting me the folder where my bundles are. You see that I'm using this env here, right, to access the bundles. That's a nickname for my applications, which will be my Forge client ID, and the alias of my applications. And I'm using dev. You may use production, testing, staging, whatever makes sense. And that's a design automation API object. Okay, now here we are going to add our code. So let's scroll down. And oops, not that much. We have three pieces of code. Let's copy the bundles. Let me paste here. So this is just going to that bundles folder and getting all the zip files that are there and returning that list. So I know which bundles I have on my application. The next one is the available engines. So it's actually using Design Automation API. So I'm using the right here, I'm saying Design Automation, get me all the engines you have. And it's also doing that for multiple pages in case I have a lot of engines. And it's doing a sort to return me all the engines available. And last is the code to create the app bundle. So let me copy this and paste here so I can explain. So this will go up. This will get the zip file of the bundle, get the engine that we want to create the bundle. We are going to name it with the name of the zip and the suffix app bundle. And we are checking if the bundle is actually there. There is no problem on that piece. Then we get all the bundles from Design Automation, all the bundles that I have. And the first thing is I'm going to check if I already have that bundle defined. So if on the list of bundles, I have my bundle already listed, and sorry, if I don't have that, then I'm going to create. So that will be the version 1 of my bundle. If I already have that bundle created, then I'm just going to upload again, but creating a new version of that. So it will be a version +1 of my bundle. So the first segment is creating a new. The second is updating existing one. So the key difference is that I have to create the bundle and I have to create the alias. On the second piece, I'm going to create a new version and modify an existing alias. In any case, after create version 1 or version +1, I have to upload the bundle, the zip file to Design Automation. The way it works is that Design Automation will give me back a URL and that I have to upload to that URL. So that URL is essentially a signed URL to a bucket on the system that I just say, okay, now upload this file to that location. And that's the code to do that. After all of that is done, it will say, okay, bundle created, you are ready to go. And there is one more piece here that I have to connect the SignalR on my sample. So let me copy this, and I have to go to the startup.cs inside the configure method and add this piece here. So startup, configure, and add this piece. So this is just telling the system to use routing and to reroute the SignalR to this hub controller. Okay, now if I run my application, I can see all my bundles and all the available engines. See if it works. Okay, now if I click on configure, I should see my bundles and so why is this not working? It's still loading, right? It shouldn't take that long. Let's try again. So let's look at the developer tools. Before we do anything else, let's go to network. And let me move this to the bottom so it's a bit easier to understand. And let's refresh the page. Oh, it's saying that file not found. Maybe I had a typo on my code here. Let me stop and Forge design automation. Isn't that the name? Oh, sorry. Yeah, I did a mistake here, right? So yeah, if I go back, I'll see that I have to create a folder for that JavaScript file just to organize stuff, right? So let me click add, and I did that mistake on the previous step. So actually, this JS should be inside the JS folder, and I want to move the file. Yeah, okay, done, and let's run again. So it's always interesting to use the developer tools on the browser to see what's happening. If something that's happening on your client or server code. In this case was just a mistake on the path. All right, so let's click here. Oh, now I have them. Okay, cool. So now I have all the 3 bundles and I have all the available engines on Design Automation. And whenever I'm going to create one of those things, I just say select the bundle and select the engine. But I'm not going to create this because the way this code is prepared to work is to create the bundle and the activity together. And we are going to do the activity on the next session of the training. Let me stop for now. And I see there are a few questions. So Lucas is saying that he got an exception, could not find path for bundles folder. So Lucas, probably you have to make sure that the path is correct. You need that bundles folder inside www root folder. So make sure that you have this. Okay, so it worked then. And yeah, Forrest, thank you. Thank you for spotting the problem before I did. So yeah, so the JS is supposed to be inside the JS file. Right. There is one more question from Navid. Suppose we want to launch a service and charge our client based on the cost of the Autodesk service. Is it possible to receive processing cost and how many cloud credits is consumed by each individual task? So design automation specifically, you pay by the hour. So and we measure that to the millisecond, I believe. So once we finish this training today, you see that, and if I move back to the beginning of the tutorial, you see that it runs the process, and by the end of it, you get a report. And that report includes all the output, plus it includes the execution time. So you see here, time queued, time started, time ended. So you can, after you finish executing the work item, you can get the times and do the math and calculate how much it costs to run that specific job. So that will be the way for you to get that value. We are not going to give you a complete report of every single work item. We just say that on the system, you can see how many credits you have and how many credits you have consumed, but not the individual breakdown. So you should be recording and keeping record of all the reports out of your system so you can track them, right? And that's also something for you to debug later. Keeping the report on your side is the best way to debug your application in the future if you need. So if you name your web project, there is one more question here from Forrest. If you name your web project anything other than for sample, you have to change the post. Yes. So as I said, this specific sample is connected a few pieces, right? So if you have a different name on your project name, then if you look at the AutoCAD engine specific piece, there is a post build event that is using the for sample, right? So yeah, as this is a tutorial and it's step by step, it's better to use the same names we have or the same names we proposed, the exact same ones. Otherwise, your code may fail at some point. For your real application, you don't have to worry about that. You can just have different scripts and different pieces running. But for this tutorial, please maintain the names as we're using. All right, so we now completed the upload of our code, and we can now create bundles. We can see all the bundles, and we can see all the engines on our application. If we quickly try it. And that should be it for this session. So for now, you should have a list of plugins and how to create an app bundle. Oops. And you can download the plugins from that code. And if you're feeling that you want to try create the plugin yourself, you can do it. We're not going to do this here today, just because of time. On the next session, 2 p.m., we'll be reviewing how to create an activity and how to execute the work item. There is one more question from David. I didn't get the list of engines. So David, can you look at just like I did here, when you launch your application, check on the developer tools, right? So in most browsers will be under the settings, you'll see something like more tools and developer tools. And you should look at in this case, you should look at the network piece. And you should see what's happening. So in my case, I see that it's trying to get bundles, get engines, but the get activities is not working because I didn't implement that piece yet. So check if if you see the get engines, if you click on it, you should see something like this. If you don't see it, it means that something is wrong. So we have to fix it. But you should see the response from the system here. Oops, come back here. Okay, as before, I'll leave this session running and you can post your questions on the Q&A. And once we get back, we're going to review this and finalize our sample. Okay, so we are about to start the session 4. So before we move to the session 4, is there any other questions here? I don't see any other questions. So let's get started. So this session is about creating the activity and executing the work item. So let's see back on our code. Let's close this. And so on this step, we're going to define activity, again, .NET Core. And I just have a few extra pieces of code. So this first one is the engine and attributes. So let's copy this and go to our design automation controller and add here. So this is just returning the execution line for each engine. So that's quite interesting because depending on the engine, you need to execute a bit different. So this is the executable for each engine and the attributes you have to pass, the input file, the bundle, the script, etc. Next is the code to create the activity. Let's paste in here. So this is very much similar to the create bundle, right? So we get the list of all the existing activities. And if our activity is not there, we create, the code is here. And it's defined that our activity has this ID, the bundles that we'll be using, the command line, and this is applicable for AutoCAD, the engine, and the parameters we are passing. So we have one input file, one input data, which is the input width and height, and the output file, which is essentially the modified input file, and the script, which is applicable for AutoCAD. And in this case, you're not defining a new version of the activity because this sample is not designed to have different activities, just different bundles. Last is the code to get all the defined activities. So let's paste in here. This is just listing us all the activities we have. If we run this now, we can click and run. And what we'll do is now we have the code to create the app bundle and to create the activity. So let's see this piece. Still loading. Yes. Oh, it's starting to compile. And okay, so now if you click on configure, we have the bundles. And let's say I'm going to choose RVT, and I can select the RVT engine 2022. And if I click create update, that will define the app bundle. And that's the app bundle ID. And that will also create the activity. And that's the activity ID. You see that we have the dev as the alias at the end, and the nickname, which is my client ID at the beginning. And now I can see the activity defined right here. The only piece that we have to finish now is to create the work item. So let's click on the .NET Core again. And that's the code for the work item. And that's the big one, right? That is going to get the width and height and define as an input the activity name and the browser connection. That's the ID of the browser, so you can send back the results. That's using SignalR to identify each browser. For our code, we have one input, which is the input file, which is right here. To create the input file, we have to upload that to a bucket to make it available online. And then we upload that file there. Then we define, okay, get the input file from that location and send the output, get the input JSON from here, which I'm just passing as a string, the JSON, and send the output back to a different object bucket. And now that I have the input file, input data, and output file, I can define the work item, which has input file, input data, output file. And this is the onComplete that will be calling back my application with the callback URL using the ngrok. And it will just return the work item ID to the application. The last piece is to handle the callback. So as soon as my application is executed, I need to handle the callback. So as soon as I get the callback from Design Automation, it's going to send to the client, to the browser, okay, I'm complete. It will get the report and send the report to the client and send the URL of the output file to the client. The last piece is to clear my account. So this is actually just to help you. In some cases where we start seeing some strange problems, we can just clear the account and delete all the bundles and activities. And that should help us get a fresh start. So we start from create everything again. Last, to run our application, we can get the sample files from this here location. Remember that we have a specific kind of application. It's changing the width and height. So we need a specific type of file. So I'm going to download the RVT and so I can run this. Okay, so now I have all I need. I can just execute. As I already created my app bundle and activity, I don't have to create that again. I can just run it, right? It's already there. I don't have to create that again because I can see that. Just give it a moment. It should appear in here. And as I'm running this on a parallel machine, that's why it's a bit slow. So it's not always like that. So let's say I'm going to change to 10 and 10. I'm going to choose the file that I just downloaded from the Revit sample file. And that's my Revit file. Oh, you see my ngrok expired. So I have to restart and get the new one from here. And let me stop and go back to my project settings. And this will happen because it's just 2 hours and we are running this tutorial for the whole day, right? So let me paste in here. That's a new one and run again with F5. So if I leave this open, I can specify the new width and height, select the file, my sample file, and did I do this right? Yes, open. At the activity that I want to execute, and then I can start executing it. So it's going to upload the input file to the web because Design Automation will grab that file from OSS and start the work item. Now, as soon as the execution is done, it will call me back using the ngrok. This here will show me what's happening. My code will capture that and send the result back to the client. When you are running this on the cloud, you don't have to worry about ngrok. This is just for local debugging, right? When you run that on a server, you don't have to worry about that anymore. And let's wait a bit longer. So while it's executing, any questions, any other questions you may have? Let me check if I did this right. Yeah, that's the correct one. Well, it usually doesn't take that long. Back here and see if we're getting the callback as expected. Actually here. There is a question from Darren. Do you have documentation for deploying and publishing for web apps on IIS hosted systems? Actually, we do have some samples. Let me just check this here. What's wrong with watch? And let me. Oh, it's correct here. Yeah, maybe it's just busy right now. Yeah, bad gateways is a different error message. We should at least get, yeah, here we go, here we are. It's just taking long because maybe it's busy right now. So that's a good point, right? So design automation may take extra time depending on the queuing time. So if I look here, I can see that the job was queued at, so this is GMT time, right? So 21:07 and was actually executed 21:07 downloaded started. And it started executing again 21:07, finished at 21:10, and upload the results back 21. And maybe the first time didn't work out, so maybe have to look at it. But as I see, it was a result, and that was one of the questions, right? How can we measure the time it takes? So you can measure the time from download started all the way to uploaded ended. So that's how much you pay design automation. So there was a question on if you have samples on how to deploy. If you go to deployment section of the tutorial, there are a few examples. There are several options out there, but this is just one of the options on how to deploy to the web. That should help. So if you're getting bad gateway, Navid, is probably something with your code, and it's most likely that you have maybe a breakpoint or the code's not working. And another suggestion is to make sure that you have this host header right here, because if you don't have this piece, you may get misplaced on your code. So make sure to have the precise code to call ngrok. So yeah, with that, our sample is now running. And yeah, let me try come back here. We can see that this is the output from design automation. We can see the execution inside Revit. And there is pieces on the code that show how to create logs, etc., which is quite interesting. Yeah, that was the second execution, right? So maybe the job was queued up 21:10:36, 21:10, yeah, 21:13. Yeah, so that was the first one. It took extra time to execute. So it may be sometimes it takes a bit longer to execute. So you should not count that will be always at a precise time that you send the work item. And just to finalize here, yeah, execute work item. And that's what we just did. There are a few tips and tricks on how you can, if you don't see the information, there's a problem with ngrok. Sometimes you don't get the expected results, so you can just clear your account and start fresh. If you really don't know what's happening, sometimes it's easy. If you don't see the app bundles, make sure that they are on the bundles folder. And sometimes the code for your plugin is not up to date, so you can get the newest version. You can always clear your account and make sure that they are correct. And this is aligned to output on Design Automation, the version of your DLL. So you make sure that you are running the latest version of your DLL. And if you go back to the Prepare a Plugin session, and let's say go to the AutoCAD, there is a line here showing log trace, and the same line is available for the other engines as well. If you look at the code on how to write a message that will appear on the report, on this report here, and it will show here in the middle. So that's why it's important to keep that report on your application, so you can always track what happened. And can you please download the file and test 3D Max engine? Yes, definitely. Let's see. Let me. Did you see any problem with that, Navid? And let me download the bundle and go to the downloads, go to the Max and go to run debug again and select modify your models, get the sample file and download the 3D Max file. Oh yeah, it should work. We tried everything before starting this training, so it should work. Let's go back here and let's configure again. And it's not here because you have to refresh. And let's select Max and select the 2022, create update. Let's choose a file, select the Max file and specify the Max engine and start work item. And let me move here. We don't need this breakpoint anymore. So it's uploading a file, it's creating the bundle in activity, uploading a file, and starting the work item. And we should see the callback soon. All right. Any other questions? While this is still running, any other questions that I can just try to run the code? It's all working fine. You see, now I have the callback. Oh, let me go back here. And that was the Max. Oh, failed instructions. Yeah, maybe something is not good there. Okay, so let me clear account. I believe we did try that with the older version, but not with the latest version of the engine. Maybe that's what's missing there. And I know they released this version very, very recently. So let me clear the account and select Max Param and create update. Choose a file. And I start work item. But in this case, the design automation piece is working. It's just that the code is not executing as it should inside design automation. And just giving a few moments and it should be ready soon. Let me move back to the PowerPoint. Oh, we did the demo already. So now we should have the activity and the work item. And so just leaving a few more seconds to finish to run. But moving forward, if you have any other questions, you can post all your questions on Stack Overflow. We do monitor that. And there is a specific tag for design automation. So Autodesk Design Automation, or you can use Mod Derivative, Viewer, or Forge. If you use the specific tag, that's just because people on that specific team will get your question. But if you just use Forge, we get that same way. Any of those tags should work. It's just to better categorize things. And oh yeah, here we go. Yeah, success. So I suspect that the plugin is not working well on version 2022. That may be the issue here. And I will definitely check that. It should work. Yeah, 2021 works fine, but 2022, it's not working. So we'll check that. All right, so let me move here. And Henrique, you have your, you raised your hand. You wanna open up your microphone? You are able to speak if you want.
Yeah, hello.
Hi.
Yeah, just I get it within the, I mean, I have run it with design automation, but just still with the problem. Think I need to get support for that on the BIM 360 side, I guess. So
yeah, so if you're trying that sample that I was mentioning, that sample should work, or the approach used on that sample should work. If you're using the exact same code and it's not working, I would say that it's probably a permission problem. So are you getting any error message? You can see on the report what's happening.
Yeah, it's just a problem of permissions when it's uploading the BIM 360 file on the.
Yeah. Okay, so what I would suggest you to do is to get the report on let me move screen here again. At the very end of the report, you see something like this: start upload phase, and then upload into some other some location, and then end upload phase, right?
Okay.
This line here it's where you upload to BIM 360, and if it doesn't work, you get a message saying I don't know, 404, 403, whatever, some error message. So you can get that error message and post a question using design automation, and we'll definitely look at it.
Okay.
Or if you have that right now, we can. If you want to show me, we can discuss. But it's probably we have to look at the report to see what's going on. And if you're saying that it's just the upload that is not working, I would say that it is on this piece here after you finish the process.
Yeah, the upload to the BIM 360, the upload to the design automation is working well. So yeah. I tried with the same sample, uploading different activity and bundle, and it's working fine. It's just when it gets into the final result being uploaded, it's.
Yeah, so we definitely need this report to see what's going on, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you can send that to us or post on Stack Overflow, we can see what's going on your case.
All right then. Yeah, I will post it to Stack Overflow because right now I have it. I've been testing it around moving it, so it's like will be difficult to find the error.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Great. Yeah. Well,
Thank you very much.
It's usually the upload. We can definitely look at for you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Come back here. Any other questions? Yeah, Navid, is it possible to see the current running work items? You have to keep track of them. So we don't give you a list of all the work items on your account. You have to keep a record of all the work items. So what I would suggest you is to, as soon as you finish or as soon as you start a process, you create a record on your system saying, I'm executing this work item, and you get the ID. That's the ID, and you keep that on your records. Thank you, Navid. Any other questions? Okay, so thank you very much for joining. Oh, can functions run simultaneously? Yes, you can run multiple work items at the same time. You can trigger as much as you want on as many work items as you want. Of course, there is a limit on the system that if you run 1,000, we may not have capacity to run 1,000 at the same time, but you can submit them. They will be queued up and executed as soon as possible. So you can run parallel work items. Definitely, Henry. Thank you. So just to finalize, I'll keep this session open for a few more minutes. If you have any additional questions, just post on the Q&A and I'll definitely address it. And if that's it, and thank you very much for attending today. Hope you enjoyed the training, and hope you also enjoy AU. It's coming in 2 or 3 weeks, and that should be it. Thank you very much for attending today.